Welcome to Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready, we're about to live in your head rent-free. Welcome back, Otterites. This is episode 159. I am Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis.
Code of Honor. Code of Honor.
Yabba yabba.
So, listeners, of course, this is some of our favorite stuff to do. The format being Francis and I usually come up with quotes.
Great quotations.
Great quotations.
Never know where they're coming from.
With the idea of trying to hem Robert into a corner that he can't get out of. That's not really the format, but Robert then usually...
But it's always fascinating to see where I'll go.
Yes, Robert usually... that's why he's called the hammer, is he tries to put these together into a coherent whole with his quote.
And we probably should say that you and I do not collude on what we're going to do.
Very generally, we do not.
No, we just don't.
Right, so yeah, not a ton of collusion, overproduction, ahead of time kind of deal. That's a peek behind the curtain is that these are not... None of our episodes, but especially these, are not super overproduced. We don't edit them at the end or
no
anything like that.
We might have a theme that we go with, but even then, we don't know what we're going to pick.
Right.
And, the only time we ever had to shuffle, and I don't think it's ever happened, is if whoever goes first actually picked the same thing the second one picked in a theme one. That could happen.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever happened.
But it's never
I've
happened.
had it where they've been considerations.
Yeah.
But
That's
never
correct.
actually, oh my God, I got to change my quote.
That's right. It's never happened.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't think it's going to happen today because we're just straight out the gate here.
Not a themed episode. We do like those. We had our Chesterton. We had a Lincoln. We had a Roosevelt. I think.
We did Voltaire.
Shatner. Kirk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So we've done those themes, but this one's just a freewheeler. And Captain's prerogative. I'm going to go first.
Go first.
Oh, okay.
I like to normally defer to Francis, but I'm going to go first. So I have dug up a great PJ. And normally, you guys know, I like to do the shorter ones, and I leave the long setups to Francis. But I'm going to pull Francis today, and I'm going to do the paragraph.
All right, so hold on, let me get settled here.
Yeah.
Because Francis's long ones is usually the setup.
Yes. So I'm just going to breeze right into this one, no setup.
Oh, okay.
This is a PJ. I think it's probably from remarks to a Cato Institute or Heritage or somebody like that. It's not from one of his articles or books. So, freedom is not empowerment. Empowerment is what the Serbs have in Bosnia. Anybody can grab a gun and be empowered. It's not entitlement. An entitlement is what people on welfare get, and how free are they? It's not an endless expanding list of rights. The right to education, the right to food and housing. That's not freedom. That's dependency. Those aren't rights. Those are the rations of slavery. Hay in a barn for human cattle. There is only one basic human right. The right to do as you damn well please. And with it comes the only basic human duty. The duty to take the consequences. So again, that's PJ from probably the early 90s, again, with the reference
that's
to
like
Serbia.
Quintessential PJ O'Rourke.
Yeah.
That's very libertarian.
Yeah, most likely those are from some kind of address or speech or something.
That would be very Cato.
To a Cato
group,
Institute libertarian group.
Yeah.
But I just love that one because it really...
I can't imagine why it speaks to you.
Yeah, it just really defines in a simple way what liberty really means. And it's not freedom from material want. My freedom cannot mean you have to give me stuff. Because that infringes on your freedom.
Well, to an extent, I agree with that. However,
Good. Go.
However, and there was a time when probably I would have agreed 100% with that. But my understanding of my faith and relationship between God and man has modified that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that even though I am not my brother's keeper in the absolute sense, however, I do have a moral responsibility as part of, whether you want to call it the family of man or the family of God.
Yes, okay.
To ensure, or to help ensure, because it's not a. I personally have responsibility for every single person, because that's not the point either. But I do believe there is a moral responsibility to one another, and it's not just the don't encroach upon their freedoms. It goes beyond that.
Gotcha.
Because
gotcha.
your right to not be encroached upon can, in turn, unintentionally encroach on others.
Right, especially if to do as you damn well please means to do nothing at all.
Right,
To
and
not
that's
work.
an encroachment.
Yeah.
That was, I'm sure, the intention of what was meant to be thought at that when he made that address.
Right, but still, we're talking about the philosophical backing.
Right,
on
right,
this.
right. And PJ, I think, in the end, would agree with you as well, because he would see that as, yeah, it's an individual obligation. Because he would very, another one of his quotes is, this idea that the government has this obligation to do things, that's a weasel way out.
Well,
For someone who says, well, I'm expressing my charity through making the government do things. No, charity's personal. You're
there can be an argument made for both.
Yeah.
The problem that I see it is which is what we have today, where the government has become the blunt instrument
yes.
that is the default. Part of true charity, which the root of the word is caritas, which is a form of love. It's actually
Yes.
the highest form of love, which is the wanting the best for the other. That is true caritas. That is true charity. Whereas in this country, charity means what I begrudgingly give you that you don't really deserve, but I'm giving it to you out of the goodness of my heart. So that is very much a me-centered
Yes.
idea of looking at charity.
And transferring your charity obligation to the government.
And so we have transferred, and they're both the wrong way to look at it.
Yes.
Because I really do believe, I've come to believe that there is a both an individual and collective responsibility on all of us to be that rising tide that lifts all boats, to use a Art Laffer kind of
Yes.
idea. You can't do it alone. The only true libertarian, in the absolute truest sense, is the guy who lives off in the grid, up in the mountains, and has no contact with anybody, and who made his own tools, who built his own house, dug his own well with the shovel he made with his own hands. Okay? There is no such thing as a true, perfect individualist.
No
Because-
man is an island.
No, right. If he's an island, he's going to die a nasty short at the end of a nasty, short, brutish life, because you just can't.
I think we
we're
just
sitting.
quoted like 4 different people there, didn't we?
Yeah, I know. I'm pulling everything. I'm pulling everybody
That's
here.
great. That's great.
But I mean, so on the one hand, yes, I agree, and the consequences are important because
Yes.
we do have
Life's annoying backpack responsibility.
yes. Well, it's not just responsibility as well, because consequences can be negative
Yeah.
as well. Some of the consequences are responsibility, but some of them can just be you screwed up, so here's what's going to happen. And I think the debate can be around, well, what do we mean by consequences, and what are they?
Yeah.
Because, on a agency level, yes, we all have the right to do whatever we want, or we have the ability to do that. Whether or not that's truly a right, because I do not have the right to bash you in the head, whether or not that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
So
And I think a big part of this too, again, PJ has a work ethic to him.
mm-hmm.
He's kind of this paradox of potty humor and an accountant. Sort of at the same, like, I remember there's a documentary, I think I've mentioned this before, about National Lampoon, the magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And PJ ends up as the editor-in-chief of National Lampoon magazine. And he actually makes the thing, like, publish on time. So you can imagine a magazine that's potty humor, racial insults, and boobs. It was important to him to actually get it out on schedule. He's this weird paradox of do whatever you please, but what I really mean by that is do something. We've talked about doing something worthwhile. That's PJ. It's get out there and do, again, this do as you damn well please doesn't mean, sit in your basement and play video games until your chair turns color with your sweat. It means get out there, do. And he is someone who did this, this life of, he went practically everywhere where there was trouble. I mean, one of his books is All the Trouble in the World. And he saw the world. He went everywhere there was trouble. And it's kind of a weird destiny for, again, a guy who his first big-time major job is making the National Lampoon publish on time. So,
that's pretty good resume stuffer at the time.
Yeah, it's really this
weird
thing of why would it matter if this magazine is so irreverent and so unorthodox and so radical, but we're also going to make money and publish on time. a great capitalist enterprise of being subversive. It's so weird. But he did it, and then went from there and moved on to, this great traveling gonzo journalist.
So, Francis, you're awfully quiet over there. I got something I was going to say, but I'm thinking, Francis is sitting there waiting, and I'm...
No, I'm not really. You go ahead and say what you're going to say.
No, because we've dominated here.
But that's okay.
You need to add something to the conversation.
I'm just kind of... I'm glad you gave the caveat of what he meant and the audience he was speaking at. Because if you take that on the surface, I would absolutely push back 100%. Because
right. It's easy to push
you
back.
You cannot do what you want. In fact, we see that as, in many respects, morally reprehensible. Because
right, that's license.
That's license. That's
right.
exactly
and he would definitely say freedom is not license. Right. There's definitely a PJ.
But the problem is, too many people see that, and they take it on the surface.
That's exactly it. That's where I was going to go.
And do as you damn well please means live your life productively.
Well,
doesn't say that.
It doesn't say that. He may mean it, and he may ultimately think, well, that's what we have to
feel it. Yeah.
But see, the problem with this quote and with so much of what we talk about is not so much with the quotes themselves, but it presumes something that is left unsaid.
Yes, that's exactly
it. It presumes the moral underpinning. I think it was... it might have been de Tocqueville that said... I can't remember which one that said it, but a democracy is meant for a moral people.
Yeah. That was very much a part of the founders' notions.
Right. It's like Ben Franklin said.
That's a very...
We have given you a republic. Now let's see if you can keep it.
Yeah, I mean, that's very much a John Adams, Thomas Jefferson ideal.
Yeah, it's a
you must be moral.
Enlightenment ideal.
Yes. Yeah. The only way a republic, a functioning democracy survives is the moral underpinnings of the people.
And this quote, for it to be taken as a good quote, a good code to live by, it has to presume that.
Yes.
Because, so...
But it can mean, the duty to do as you damn well, or the ability to do as you damn well please. If it does mean for you sitting in your basement until your chair turns sweat stained from playing video games, there's a consequence to that.
There is.
The consequence being you're not going to have any money and everyone's going to think you're a loser. Take those consequences. And you're
going to weigh 400 pounds.
Right. You're not... Don't come out and say, well, this is perfectly legitimate. I'm just as good as you. Well, yeah, sure. You're still...
In the inherent dignity of the human person level?
On certain levels, that's a universal. But on other levels, it's absolutely not.
Right. Be prepared to be called a loser.
Right. Because, I don't want to get into the dichotomy of, that inherent dignity that I love so much and the utilitarianism. Because...
We're not much for utilitarianism here.
No.
Correct.
But, we start talking about that guy in his basement, we start skating close to that thin ice.
Yeah, because he produces nothing.
Right. And certainly,
carbon
again,
dioxide.
from a moral aspect, he's sinning in that respect, in that he is leeching off of everybody.
Mom, everybody.
Society, whatever. Because, he may be on disability, so he's leeching off everybody. When he could have gotten himself out of that damn chair and gone and gotten a job. Now, maybe he has a medical condition and he can't. So, you start throwing in all these things. Well, maybe for this guy, it's not legitimate that that's all he does. Maybe for this guy, that's all he can do because he's not literally able.
Well, as Trevor Slattery would say, it's complicated.
It's complicated. So that's why, in the middle of his quote where he's talking about...
but there has to be if there's no desire to do anything productive.
Right.
That's where you're talking about there's a real sin to that.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So you would then support the idea, if you believe that is truth, and I think we can say that anything that leads to the dampening or cutting away of the human spirit to do better is inherently bad?
Yeah, I think you would have to go there.
You have to define do better a little bit.
Well, yes. That's correct. But ultimately, what I'm saying is that is my entire argument against the legalization of drugs. Because I do believe marijuana in particular does exactly, it promotes and eventually ends where you're talking about, where those who use it will want to do nothing except get high, get stoned. It takes away the human spirit to achieve. And how much of the goodness, of the dignity of humanity is that? Yeah. That's why, because I've had arguments with folks before, but I want to. I should be able to. And I said, well, yeah.
You can make this, and again, this is just as a kind of argument they'll make, and I think it's a valid argument, is that why is marijuana any different from alcohol?
Because you do end up in the same place if
right.
you overuse alcohol.
That
is exactly.
Why does it take a constitutional amendment to ban alcohol, but not pot? Think about it.
Yep.
So that's a very interesting legal and moral set of questions right there. But I understand exactly what you're saying, though.
Yeah, I think
even though it may be legal in some places.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Yeah.
You're right. It's not something that contributes to the greater good of society. And the guy who takes PJ's "do what you damn well please" to its logical end, not even necessarily its extreme end, just its logical end, quite often is not the guy who is contributing to society. Mm-hmm. Even though, Martin, you have very much a get the hell off my lawn, you damn kids vibe, which is understandable because I work hard on my lawn.
Well, Ivar works very hard on my lawn.
Well, you have him do it, so it's the same thing. But still though, it's your lawn. You don't want dogs coming along and crapping on it all the time without somebody cleaning it up. I understand. You walk your dog, he craps on my lawn, then clean it up. Don't leave it.
Yep.
But still, you live in a house that was not built directly by you. There was an intricate, complex, almost infinitely complex system that built your house, that put the roads together for you to drive the car that again, somebody else built, runs on gas that comes from all over the world. So it's impossible to truly have this
leave me alone.
Yeah. It's impossible to have this. There is no such thing as unfettered freedom, because at some point my freedoms will intersect with yours, and the question becomes, well, whose freedom is the one that dominates?
And being able to negotiate that and come to a positive resolution where everybody gets a little bit of something is the key to getting the community of human beings to a better place, to a place where there isn't war and famine and horrible crap happening all the time.
Right.
They're getting to a point where there's a realization that there's nothing you can get by war that you can't get by, hey, I'll buy this from you. What would you like to buy from me?
Right. Well, that was the whole point of post World War II. Was that if we become economically entangled with our enemies, they can't stay our enemies.
They're no longer enemies. They're our trading partners.
So even though we are rivals with China, I think that the only reason they've not invaded Taiwan is not because they're afraid of the U.S. A military response is because the economic impact of that.
Yeah, they'd rather have the money than mess with Taiwan, and it's kind of like, yeah, there you go.
Right now,
there you go.
And I'm sure there are hardliners in China that think, screw it, we are the dominant power because they think they are. There's not yet, maybe one day, but not yet. But if they invade, all those smart people that are making Taiwan the superpower economically that it is, they're probably going to get out.
Yeah.
Or they'll end up getting killed accidentally because they're intellectuals, and the communists never like those people.
Yeah.
They will kill the golden goose if they invade. And
I
think they understand that
very much.
What they want is for Taiwan to come home of its own will. That would be the ideal for them.
Yeah.
Just like Hong Kong reverted back to them. Granted, not willingly.
Not willingly.
But it was coming. Everybody knew it was coming, and so they were patient. I mean, they did prod the British into doing it early, but eventually that was going to happen. They were willing to wait, and they're currently willing to wait. But if you entangle them economically, it's much more difficult to go to war. Somebody like Putin aside, there should be no reason why he invaded.
There's nothing he can get from Ukraine that he couldn't have gotten by just being a trade partner. Friendly. There's nothing to get.
Right.
Why is this even happening? There's nothing. There's no advantage here. It's just stupid. It's this goofy dream.
Well, he's got this idea of recreating the Soviet Union, apparently.
Yeah, the Russian Empire / Soviet Empire.
Right.
And it's just dumb anymore.
Right.
It's a 19th century notion in the middle of the 21st century. It's just stupid.
It is.
So, unfortunately for Ukraine.
Yeah, so those consequences he talks about, I think, are the key to applying and understanding this quote.
Yes.
Because you have to understand, part of those consequences are, you do have some kind of responsibility to take care of people who are starving to death.
Or to go get a job and at least take care of yourself.
Well, yes. But I mean, if you got somebody who's literally, homeless because of whether they kicked out of the sanitarium 30 years ago or whatever, there are legitimate people that have an immediate need for help. Should they be permanently put in that situation? No, because that's not dignified for them. And that's the kind of slavery I think he's talking about there.
Yeah.
But again, part of those consequences are not just, if I screw up, I go to jail or,
But it's, I mean, you're absolutely right, because it's dependency forever is different from
I need a help
unemployment benefits.
Yeah.
Or, okay, we're going to tide you over through this rough part of the economy, but then on the other end of this, all right, let's go get a job. Because that's kind of where we are now. We're in this treading water spot of still handing out government checks. Well, I know it seems awful to end that kind of thing, but it really isn't. There's an admiration for the human spirit in ending endless assistance. Okay, we believe in you. You don't need this anymore.
Well, and the real question is,
go get a job.
Well, the real question is, though, how do you end it humanely?
Yes.
In the sense that, if you've got somebody that's depending on these government checks, you can't just simply cut them off.
Yeah.
Because then, they, in very short order, they become homeless and starving to death. So, our problem is, how do we apply those consequences? Meaning, how do you better yourself to get a job? How do you get off of the government teat so that you regain a sense of dignity, of personal responsibility, of personal goodness? That's, I think, one of the worst things about those sorts of programs is the ones that are truly the people who stay on them generationally.
It's super dehumanizing.
It is. It's a
very
horrible
much
dehumanizing.
You're nothing but an address we send a check to.
Right. And by the way, vote for us.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
I hate putting it like that, but that's the way it works.
Yeah.
And that's the way it works. Whether you're talking about government subsidies to farmers, or to the oil industry, or to big tobacco, or people who are on individual welfare, TANF or SNAP or any of those things. The only difference is the whether it's an individual level that is being I don't want to say controlled, but in a way, or at the large corporate level, who's doing the controlling. They're all getting government money somehow. Anyways,
let's turn it over to Francis.
I'm going to go and do something.
He'll probably do something very much more uplifting than I've done.
I think yours is great discussion material, obviously, because
Yeah.
you and I dominated it.
Yes.
I'm going to give you something that I'm not going to tell you who said it until we get into it.
Okay. Go.
All right.
Go.
So this is a radical change here. So I'm not going to say who said it because I don't want to bias you. But here's the quote. It's very short. Nothing is more difficult and therefore more precious than to be able to decide. I'll repeat it. Nothing is more difficult and therefore more precious than to be able to decide. Gentlemen.
Maya Angelou.
I didn't ask you to tell me who said it.
Well, I thought that was kind of part of the
No,
we're
that's
doing a
later.
guessing game.
Talk about the merits
Oh,
of it.
talk about the merits first, and then we'll figure out who said it.
I'll give that to you here eventually when the time is right.
All right.
Very famous person, I can tell you that. So this is not
merits.
Nothing is more precious or difficult than to decide. Decision. That's what it's about.
Or doing as you damn well please.
What's that got to do with anything?
That's what you're deciding.
Yeah, that's what you're deciding. What am I going to do?
Well, yeah.
So what's precious is doing as I damn well please. And
That's
taking
one
the
take on it.
consequences. I mean, for me, PJ is just a funnier way of saying something very similar. There is only one fundamental human right, doing as you damn well please.
Yes,
there's
but
only
that's
one
not
fundamental
what this-
human right,
Well,
the ability to decide.
no, it's not that. It says it's nothing more precious because it's difficult. What he's saying is people can't do this, and they should be able to.
So it's not Maya Angelou, it's a he.
It's a he.
Okay, that's well.
That's
yes,
keep
that's
it-
fine.
that's-
I don't want to repeat. I want to repeat the quote.
I'm
So
having
yeah.
a hard time
nothing is more.
differentiating this from what I just said.
Well, I'm trying to. It's nothing is more difficult, and I'll just drop out the rest of it. Nothing is more difficult than being able to decide. That's what he's saying. Nothing is more difficult than being able to decide.
In other
Agree
words,
or disagree?
the vast majority of people
Are indecisive.
are not only indecisive, but almost incapable. In other words, they have given up their agency, their personal agency, not only their ability to decide, but their desire to decide.
Mm-hmm.
So
They
therefore,
let things happen to them.
I would agree.
therefore, the tyrant who limits your decision making is valid.
No, he's unique.
No, he's not.
But
Well-
if people can't decide,
Well,
then
based on
let's
law
go
of
ahead and
averages, he would have to be.
let's
assuming it's
cede
true.
our ability to decide things to someone else.
That's
the-
what this individual
the
is
story
saying.
of the 21st century. I can't do things on my own, so government, you do it for me. I can't decide.
Oh,
Well,
Might have
that's
happened
now
with
you're
20th, too.
now you're getting into what he's talking about here.
Well, but yeah, I think Martin is absolutely correct in the way he's taking this, though, because because the question is, what are you deciding? All right. So yeah, you can decide. Well, I like this versus that. That's not much of a decision.
Yeah, I mean, Pepsi versus Coke is not monumental.
Well, and I don't think it has to be. But because you could literally be somebody who, like, did you guys ever see The Good Place?
yeah, first season.
All right. Oh, great show. So there's a guy on there who literally cannot make a decision. And he is the ultimate indecisive person.
Okay.
And that's why he's in the place where he's at. And it's a great illustration of this because, I mean, he's paralyzed. And
And that's what this individual... See,
He's
if I told you
paralyzed.
said it, you'd go in a totally different direction.
well, you see, but he's paralyzed because all of these decisions that he can't make are about things that need to be done.
Yeah.
So it literally is the doing. that he's talking about.
But you're talking about a reaction to indecision.
Yeah, it's about indecision itself is a common bad thing.
Right. I mean,
most people can't, according to this person, most people can't do it.
Yeah, as I was going to say, I'm stressing here, indecision justifies the tyrant.
No, I don't think justifies. Indecision
empowers the
tyrant.
Indecision empowers the tyrant. The tyrant views it as justification.
Yes.
Perhaps. Because somebody's got to decide.
Right.
On whatever it is. A decision must be made.
Well, let's put it this way, to maybe help you connect to what Martin is saying with his quote. It's not being indecisive, the inability to decide is giving up your freedom to act.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, again, so yes, his quote is literally just, it is just a funny, it's a PJ way of saying the same, not the same thing, but they're two sides of the same coin. Because that decision-making capability, it's always to do something, to act. I mean, because like I said, yeah, I can decide to think, because, well, I don't want to say everybody thinks all day, because I'm one of those people who has that running dialogue in his head all day long.
Yeah.
Not everybody does that. It shocked me when I came across an article that talked about studies that have been done. Not everybody has dialogue going on in their head all the time. Not everybody even thinks in sentences in their head all the time. A lot of times it's literally images or concepts in however way they visualize that.
That can be a very neat and creative way to do things.
Yeah.
But
so,
it's tough for, it depends on your hemisphere, I guess it is.
Well, I don't know, because it seemed to be fairly... Yeah, I can't remember what the division was. It might have been half and half. I don't know.
It's like one of those left brain, right brain.
I'm not entirely sure it was left brain, right brain.
Wow.
But it was just very interesting that because to me, what do you mean? There's people don't talk to themselves? Because I mean, everybody will have an image of something. So like if you're hungry, you may have a picture in your head of a particular meal, but you may also say at the same time, "Ooh, I really want that."
Yeah, there's language going on in your head.
Right. For me, it's language.
That's correct, and that's
not just imagery.
That's right. There's a difference. You're right. I cannot conceive of those who wouldn't have the language constantly
right.
running.
But that's because we are wired a certain way.
That's exactly right.
But that's why I say it's one thing to be able to say I think this, because that's the ultimate freedom to think what you want. Nobody can impinge on that. You may choose to think how they want you to think. But that's because you have chosen that.
At least you made a choice.
You did make a choice. Now, and that's a little bit different. That's kind of the exception that proves the rule that I'm talking about here. But when you decide, it's a decision to act. It is cutting off all other possibilities. All right? That's what deciding means. It's like, I choose this.
And that's a regular theme of ours.
And that's an inherent freedom.
Yeah, this balance between thought and action.
And it's deliberate. At least in the example.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's also, a decision is always deliberate. Because even the decision to not make a decision is a decision. It is ceding your, like I said, ceding your agency.
Yeah.
It is letting life happen to you.
Or choose not to decide.
Letting someone else decide for you.
Yes.
Or, let me put it a different way, letting, say, for example, your political party make the decision for you.
Yes.
Because ultimately that's kind of where I'm going with this, is how many people in this country, in this world, in this history, have been nothing but sheep that will follow Henry VIII said, there's a great mass of people in this country who will follow me because they'll follow anything that moves. And that's kind of what this person is talking about. He's saying,
I get that.
So many people, and that's what it's really not about decide, not decide. It's about because he says it's difficult, most people just don't.
Right.
And that is, that's what I want to
That's a common theme in American politics is somebody's got to do something.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's got to be the right thing. Let's hold on here.
Well, and I think it's even beyond that, because I see where you're going, especially when you apply it to today's politics and the way you were talking about it, Francis. And it's not just deciding not to decide, because I think people make decisions far more often than they think they do. I really do. It's subtle, because every action is a decision that is beyond the autonomic functions of your body.
Right.
You know, it's time to go to the bathroom. Well, yeah, you can make the case that I choose to go do it on the toilet rather than my pants, but that's almost an automatic thing. All right. So beyond some of those kinds of things, but every action is a decision. And I think that when we talk about the political stuff, we've gotten to the point where everybody, even Republicans, have bought into identity politics. Yeah. In the sense that we have chosen to align ourselves with this group. Whether it's based on external characteristics or the feeling, not necessarily even the reality, but the feeling that we are being oppressed. They've chosen that because they see that as a way to either help regain their agency, even though they realize they're giving it up. Because once they decide to join one of these particular identities,
adherence to a group is about power.
They have to adhere to the beliefs and practices of the group.
Yeah.
In many ways, it's not unlike choosing a faith, choosing a religion. We choose to adhere to the tenets of our Catholic faith. But we do it not because we're looking for personal agency or power. We're doing it because we believe it's true. And therefore, it is a free act of the will. Not I'm giving up.
It's also it's not based on tribalism, because that's kind of what we're talking about here. Is you give up, but you cede much of your agency to the tribe, with the understanding that the tribe will therefore be your path to power,
or your protection,
either one.
Yes. Especially power, though.
That's correct. That's ultimately.
That's very insightful, Francis. Very insightful. All right, so who said it, man? Come on.
Bonaparte.
That's a Bonaparte.
That's Bonaparte. That's Napoleon Bonaparte that said that. And it's interesting that you gravitated towards the concept of tyranny when you didn't know who that was, because I would have expected you not to do that. But if I told you ahead, I knew you would. So
again, because tyrants thrive on indecision.
He recognizes the when
you have that vacuum, that's what gives them.
He's coming from a philosophical point. Is they can't do it. They don't know how because they don't.
Well, I would give a counterpoint to that. So, for the most part, the people in this country, even the almost all of the even the worst ones, are the most educated people in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. You know. Almost everybody reads and writes to a degree. Yeah. Can do math to a degree. You know, simple, basic stuff to get you through. These are things that peasants even 100 to 150 years ago,
during Bonaparte's time,
couldn't even have thought of.
Yeah.
But there's hold on. Oh yes, please go ahead.
So, life. You can make the argument that, well, if we're so smart, then why are things so messed up? Because life is so complex, so overwhelming, that it's much easier for people to say, I can't figure this out.
Save me.
Well, it can be, but it can just be they're looking for the paradigm to shape their world. Everybody needs that lens through which to look at the world. We view it through our faith. All right? I would say for both of us, that's probably the primary way we look at the world.
Yeah.
Because it's that much part of us. And not everybody has that. Not everybody is that anchored in something. And when the complexities of life, think about the complexities of life nowadays. I mean, it's tremendous. Granted, as a peasant, it was simple because you were working sun up to sun down, trying to feed your family and pay the local lord, or whatever other stuff you had to do. You didn't have time to sit around and make a podcast about philosophical matters. Right. So in many ways, though, life is so complex. You got so many things pulling on you, so many things demanding your time and attention, that it's almost a self-defense mechanism. So it's understandable when we start talking about the political aspect and the identity politics of it, where you're looking for a tribe, because the tribe is the lens through which you view the world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a factor of trust to it. Someone like Napoleon trusted himself, but he couldn't trust others.
Yeah,
so
that's a general.
The counterpoint of Washington. Yes, he trusted himself, but he could trust others. He knew that he could trust the people to carry forward what he had begun. And that empowered him to then walk off the stage. It's all about trust.
Well, because the reason that many who do not decide, don't see the need because they trust.
Well, but there's
authority,
there's
power.
also a flip side for Napoleon. Maybe they are deciding. They're just not deciding what he wanted them to decide.
I don't think he meant that. I mean,
but I think that's the hole in that quote, though, too. And
every quote's going to have a hole. So
yeah, every tyrant thinks people can't decide. Well, maybe they can, though. You just don't like what they decided on. Again, here we are in this modern age of these elites that think, well, you can't afford gas? Buy an electric car. Hey, you got to trust us to know what works for our lives. Mm-hmm. Okay? Just because we're not deciding what you want us to decide doesn't mean we've done something wrong. It just means our circumstances and what we analyzed our lives, what we need to function is not what you need.
It's a very capitalist understanding. The invisible hand of the market.
I would turn that around on PJ. Because all those people he railed against that are in slavery could say, well, we didn't make the same decisions you did. Why is... So, I mean, you can use your own argument against your own vote.
There is an elitist element to it.
Yeah.
That you're not deciding... and I always say that's a big part of life is you've got to be comfortable with chaos. You've got to be comfortable with letting people make their own decisions.
No progress comes without chaos.
That's right.
I mean, that's an incontrovertible truth, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, we're already at 41 minutes, and we haven't even let Robert do his yet.
And we haven't had a bourbon break.
And we have not had a bourbon break. So real quick, bourbon break. I have poured a quick snort of Wild Turkey, which is quickly becoming something that I'm just like, why do other bourbons exist when you have Wild Turkey?
Wow.
It's so good.
It is.
It really is, especially when you factor in the price.
At a $20 some price point, Wild Turkey's hard to beat. Again, these pear, vanilla, great char oakiness to it. It's awesome. So you're still working...
I'm still down on the Green River.
Green River, which again, we had a very positive verdict on.
Very much so, yes.
And Robert, we poured you a quick snort of...
Michter's.
Right.
Which, again, again, here in Louisville, and, as so many have headquarters or rickhouses here. Mm-hmm. Presumably that's because, on the river that helps. But it's one of those ones we discovered recently that is really good. It's not necessarily one that is in top 5, but it's one of those ones that it's got a good flavor. It's relatively smooth, and I like it because it's just a little bit different than most of the ones we have. Just enough, Yeah. It's just it's a little bit higher price point. Well, not a little bit, quite a bit higher. Yeah.
I mean, it'll cost you $48 usually, unless you catch it on I think I got that about at $42.
Oh, that's a good price. Yeah.
So
I recently was buying bourbon. I was telling you guys earlier, and I got a new bottle of Basil's, Basil Hayden, and the Jim Beam double oaked. Mm-hmm. And I would have gotten the Woodford double oaked, but I was trying to find it on sale. It was on sale, but from $60 to $50. And for less than $50, I got or about $50, I got 2 bottles of bourbon. So as much as I really wanted the Woodford double oaked, I decided to wait on it a little bit longer. But yeah, so this one, it is a little bit higher price, but it's probably not quite as smooth as some of the ones we've had. But that's okay because the flavor that it leaves behind. Because the smooth ones, I think, while they're really good coming in, the flavor doesn't hang around. It goes down smooth and has that warmth generally. Spreads pretty well. But the flavor doesn't hang around. This, it does a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think it's got a little bit of sweetness in here, but I can't really tell what it is.
Yeah. I really like the Michter's, again, with its sweetness, and the aging gives it kind of a permanence, a long-lasting.
Yeah.
and then you're right, the nice, good, they call that the Kentucky hug.
Yes.
When you have that warmth in your chest, that's a good Kentucky hug.
Yep,
so that is definitely a strength of Michter's. So, Robert, wow, okay.
Lay it upon us.
Give it to us,
well,
man.
as is my habit, I ask you guys to repeat your quotes.
All right.
Because I want context for what I'm about to say.
Very quickly, this is a P.J. O'Rourke. Freedom is not empowerment. Empowerment is what the Serbs have in Bosnia. Anybody can grab a gun and be empowered. It's not entitlement. An entitlement is what people on welfare get, and how free are they? It's not an endlessly expanding list of rights. The right to education, the right to food and housing. That's not freedom, that's dependency. Those aren't rights, those are the rations of slavery, hay in a barn for human cattle. There is only one basic human right, the right to do as you damn well please. And with it comes the only basic human duty, the duty to take the consequences.
Mine is much shorter. Nothing is more difficult and therefore more precious than to be able to decide.
Yes. Napoleon Bonaparte.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
All right, so we had a really great discussion. We managed to tie your two quotes together pretty well. My work is really almost done here. And Martin, you did most of it for me because well, that's the same thing I said. So,
I immediately attacked Francis there.
Well, you didn't attack us so much. It's like, well, that's just what I said.
That's just a fancy way of saying what PJ said.
So I had several I was looking at here because, as you know, I pick mine afterwards from a list that I have pre-prepared. That's the other thing. I have a finite list I'm picking from. I'm not just pulling it out my ass from wherever. I don't, because I don't carry around a huge number of quotes in my head ready to pull out like that.
Yeah.
So this is one from a motivational speaker called Les Brown, a very famous guy. Mm-hmm. And he's one of those guys that's truly a self-made man.
Wow. Okay.
He is a black gentleman, and I want to say he's from, might be Chicago, but honestly, I'm blanking, so if I'm wrong about that, I apologize. And he was declared educably, what was it? Basically, they said he was retarded and couldn't, in the parlance of the day, couldn't learn.
Yes.
It wasn't. I don't know if it was educably disabled or whatever it is. I have to find one of his books and see. But he's not. He's a very smart man. He really is. He's very eloquent. He's got great passion about things. And so this quote, I think, is a third way of saying the same thing. So, too many of us are not living our dreams because we are living our fears.
Oh. Whoa. Whoa.
We're staying in place rather than moving forward.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Not deciding.
Not deciding. That's right.
Yeah.
But reacting to a stimulus of fear rather than to a stimulus.
Well, fear is the response to the stimulus.
Yeah, of adventure or risk.
To chaos.
Risk is our business, gentlemen. That's what this starship is about. That's why we're aboard her. Sorry.
Very known as
James T.
Awesome. Yeah.
That's right. That's what
because that's what that's about is, I mean, is there a value to being risk averse? Sure. But can it be crippling? Absolutely.
Absolutely. Just as is there a value to being able to take a risk? Absolutely. Is it a negative to take all risks?
To be reckless?
To be reckless? Yeah. Of course. So, but there is a balance between risk and being safe. Risk and reward. For every risk there's a reward. But also for being safe there's a reward. For not putting my hand on the hot stove, there's a reward. I get to keep my hand. Mm-hmm. We just don't see that as a reward because it basically doesn't hurt you. And we see it more as a negative because all you've done is not taken a chance. And in this country, that used to be seen as a good thing is taking a chance, as taking a calculated risk.
Yes.
And that's living.
We were built on risk.
Right.
I mean, it is a nation built on people who, their ancestors felt constrained in the previous setting.
Right.
And so when they
whether
there
was really a fair constraint, I mean,
but
honestly,
a religious
bunch of
constraint,
rich guys that were constrained by a bunch of rich guys across the ocean.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
But a political constraint or a religious constraint, the what's wired into American DNA, especially in the 19th century, was we got to take a chance.
Yep.
Because we don't see it this way now, but moving from New York to Ohio at one time was a huge risk.
Oh, absolutely.
Moving Maryland to Kentucky. That's my ancestors did it.
Yeah, exactly.
Not all of them survived.
Chance. Yeah, if anybody drives through the Appalachian Mountains, and especially if you do it from the East Coast, not just through the Appalachians, if you go from the coast to Louisville, and you see, because it's incredibly dense woods on those mountains, and we forget that's what the entire country east of the Mississippi looked like.
Yeah,
there weren't a whole lot of plains.
Yeah,
and by plains I mean wide open spaces. And somebody had to carve that wilderness trail. Now that was probably an animal game trail, because how else? Because you got to have something.
Yeah.
More than likely, that's what that was. But I mean, they had to carve that trail. I mean, literally, they had to clear the trail, and that's a monument. I mean, I understand how people ended up on the sides of mountains in Kentucky, in Virginia. They got so far and they said, "Hell, this is too much. I'm just stopping here."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is. Again, it's very hard for us to imagine, but at one time, leaving Philadelphia or leaving the Tidewater area of Virginia was a huge trek.
Well, even just going from your home state to the Continental Congress meetings.
Yeah, yeah.
Any journey, a mile away from your home was incredibly dangerous. Never mind hundreds of miles.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the virtue of the pioneer spirit.
Yes, yes. I mean, again,
that's one aspect.
The thing about getting as far as Tennessee, Ohio, Indiana, this was seen as the wild and untamed frontier.
And it was.
Well, and many of the Western stories, I don't know if you guys got the chance to watch 1883, the recent miniseries that was done on Paramount. It's precursor to the Yellowstone series, which I highly recommend. It's that story. Yeah. It's going from Texas. They're going to Oregon. But one family decides, and I'm not going to give it away, but because of what happens, they end up going to Montana and staying there saying, this is it. We're stopping here. The journey doesn't end where they'd originally intended because of what happens on the trip.
But you know what? That's a quintessentially American thing.
Yes, anyways. It is. That's what's so really great about this.
The destination truly is not the point when we're talking about journeys of personal development. And I don't mean that just in the motivational sense. Mm-hmm. I mean in that I seek something better for my family.
And that's literally the story that what that was for the family, and because
Oregon
the family
wasn't the point of it.
Yeah, there was opportunity there. So
it was what I can do with and for my family.
A dream.
It's the dream.
Living the dream.
Even when you are woefully inept at seeing against sometimes that risk aversion we talked about. Sometimes it's a healthy thing. And I go back to 1883 to the story. Most Sam Elliott is the trailblazer that leads the trail. It's mostly German immigrants who do not speak the language and are absolutely clueless as to the ways of the dangers they're going to be going from Texas to Oregon. And most of, I don't want to say most, most of them simply do not survive.
Well, and they don't even have any sense of the scale of what they're about to undertake.
That's
either.
Part of it too.
Because in Europe, you don't move that far. If your family comes from the town of Hamburg, they've probably been in that town for 800 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about it.
That's right.
They may have moved around some, but they wouldn't have moved too far.
That's right.
And even if you moved across your country, you're not going. It's still not as much as going from Texas to Oregon.
And some of it is hostile Indians. Mostly it was not, though, at least in this story here. I remember one small little scene that really encapsulates this. One of the young girls, for one thing, the first place they stop, they don't boil the water. And the Sam Elliott, and they're thinking, well, what are you doing? Why are you going down there and drinking that? You're going to be sick tomorrow. And, of course, most of them are. So they have to get it all out and get themselves together. And he has to show them how do you boil water. One young lady, he tells them, this is Texas, folks. Rattlesnakes. You got to be careful. They're everywhere. There's this shows one scene of this young girl squatting down by a tree that gets bit in the butt by a rattlesnake because she wouldn't look where she's going. Well, she dies.
Right, because no anti-venom.
That's right. It's and it's that you see this moment. It's a tragic story, but it's also so very clear about the risks that we're talking about here and the decisions that are made. Sometimes making the right decision is not to decide because risk. Because but then again, they were willing to risk their lives.
But the decision not to decide that is a deliberate.
It is a decision. That is correct.
Yeah. Sometimes the decision not to decide is I don't know what to do. Whatever happens, just happens.
And they were willing to leave that old country, which must have been, in 1883, was pretty oppressive at this point.
Right, the Prussians are in charge.
That's right. They had to leave, and they come down here, and most of them literally...
Even getting to Texas is an adventure for them.
That's correct.
Just getting across the ocean.
Yeah, and we know that there's this huge German influence in Texas. They're very successful in Texas.
Yeah, and they have all these belongings they bring with them that they have to leave. Right. And then they try to take half their shit with them, which of course Sam Elliott's telling them, you can't do this. You can't cross a river with this stuff in here. First river they come to, half of it gets left on the other side because you can't get across. Right. So it's a tremendous.
Forget about the piano.
That's one of the things that they want. Yeah.
So, but that's again.
Been in my family for 200 years. I said,
living the dream.
You should have left it with the family you left in Germany.
That's right, because it's staying here on the plane, and it's a tragic moment where you see these bundles of belongings. Basically, these people are stripping their lives down to just being alive, and some of them can't even do that.
Well, and
but it is
this
a
whole
dream.
journey.
This is a dream more than a fear.
Living the dream, living our dreams is making a decision to do that. It is deciding, and it's part of having the freedom to do whatever the hell you damn well want,
even if it kills you by getting bitten in the butt by a snake.
Right? Because you have to accept those consequences.
That's right.
So, like I said, this is just a different way of saying what both of you said, and even shorter. I mean, his is even shorter than yours, Martin, but mine's even shorter than both of yours.
I really like yours, Robert. That's genius stuff. People don't live dreams; they live fears.
Yep.
And we need more people to live dreams.
Yeah. Right. It's healthy to respect your fears and to mitigate your consequences of them.
But
it's unhealthy to not live your dreams at all.
Yeah.
That's it, and that's what you're talking about here. Because in many respects, if those people had given in to their fears, they would have never left Germany, much less tried to go to Oregon.
Right.
But then again,
maybe they would have had a much larger family.
Perhaps.
More. They would have been much bigger. All those people that died wouldn't have. They would have had kids of their own, and who knows how history changes.
That's right.
Based on that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of the main story of the main family. Tim McGraw and Faith Hill were the.
But on the other hand,
Ducks.
You can make the argument: is it irresponsible to take your family with small children on a cross country
wagon ride?
Which essentially is a trip by foot, for lack of. Wagon is not that much better because you're going to get out and walk part of the way.
Absolutely,
you're not going much faster than a walking speed. I mean, it's a little bit faster, but you're not going 50 miles an hour down the expressway.
Sure, you're basically carrying enough to survive the journey.
Right, if that,
you have to be able to know. Well, we're going to stop here, and you can't cross in this time of the year. We've got to get there before winter because the. Blah, blah, blah. There's all these different things here.
You can make the argument, is that the responsible thing to do? Are you taking more risk than you should? That's a great question. But if they hadn't, what would this country look like? Would we all still be east of the Mississippi? No farther west than St. Louis?
Sooner or later, somebody's going to be strong enough and smart enough to make that journey. And of course, that's what happened. Those who survived
it is too wired into, I think, American DNA to sit still, or at least it used to be.
Yeah, not just the Americans, but the immigrants who came over here saw the opportunity. Yeah, they had that too.
I think
that's where we get it. That's where we get it.
Perhaps
it's if you were happy in Britain. And you said, well, you know what? I'm not going to be a dissenter. I'll just go along.
Yeah.
Then I mean, yes. The whole idea of America is people who were discontented. It's a nation of malcontents.
Or opportunists. There's a lot of that too.
There's not a whole lot of difference.
That's a very worthy point. Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, an opportunist is somebody who sees a problem and thinks, "I have a solution." How is that different from a malcontent that says, "Damn it, that's a problem. I wish it'd leave me alone. Nobody else is going to fix it. I guess I'll have to."
Yeah. Or I'm going to leave.
Or I'm going to leave.
Or I'm going to leave. Yeah. I mean, we are a nation of malcontents and always have been.
Yeah, and that's part of our charm. It's also part of our ugliness.
Yeah.
It's part of, but it's also part of how we have moved, not just our nation, but I think part of how we have moved humanity forward. Because we're not, as we have matured as a country, to the extent that we have, we have tried to expand our ideals to more and more people. Sometimes we really suck at it. Sometimes we're very successful at it.
Yeah.
It's a mix. I like to say we take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Sometimes we take a couple steps back before we take some more forward.
3 or 4 forward.
It happens.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I think most Americans would agree that, it'd be great if everybody would live their dreams. And now, granted, the problem is not everybody has the same dream. But that's okay. That's part of that chaos, too, that progress comes from. That provides those opportunities for those malcontents to come up with a solution.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just... And we are still too wired as far as, can't sit in one place for very long, because you look at how people jump jobs. Instead of moving across the country, we look for our challenges in somewhere else. And honestly, I think that's part of our problems today, is we don't have challenges anymore.
Yep.
Not personal challenge. Our comfort is pretty well taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, people who live their fears now really are paralyzed, because what is there to be afraid of?
Right. Now, that's not to say that there aren't legitimate fears. You talk about certain minorities and their relationship with the police. They have legitimate fears.
Yeah.
Correct.
But living your fears by driving around by yourself with a mask on.
Exactly.
That's living a fear, not a dream.
Right, well,
live a dream.
That's not only living a fear. That's letting your fear dominate you.
Yes.
As well as your common sense.
Yes. So that's good stuff, guys. That's good stuff. But we're at an hour, so let's wrap up, because we could go on for another hour.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
But that was outstanding stuff, Robert. I really loved it.
Thank
Live your dream, not your fear. Francis, buddy, what is next time?
We're going to have our first female hero.
Yay!
I don't know why the hell it took us so long. But Lucille Ball.
Oh,
we're going to talk about her.
So
it's your
good.
idea to bring her in, and she's a perfect one for that, because this woman here changed television forever in so many ways. She was a genius herself, who surrounded herself with good people, of course, but she knew what she wanted. She went after it. She lived that dream and did so spectacularly. And we're going to talk about her life, and her many achievements next episode.
Hope you enjoyed another pointless discussion of eternal questions. Remember, new episodes published every Friday at noon Eastern.
Spread the word. We're on all the major podcast platforms. And leave us a comment or review, because that helps others find us.
We're on Instagram, Twitter, as well as our website, snakesandotters.com.
I'm Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis. Join us next week. Same snake time, same otter channel.